Welcome everyone tonight. Thank you for joining us for the first of two public meetings we're going to be doing here. The next one is going to be a little bit in November, and we'll talk about that as we get a little bit more. But really the goal for tonight's meeting is just to kind of just give us a little bit of education of what the levy is that's coming up, understanding what its impact, because it's a renewal, it's not a new levy, so it's not something new coming. It's a renewal of existing funding and what that funding impacts. And just also help point you to some resources that you can further kind of get a little bit more education about the district, how some of the programs are going in the district, especially a lot of the above and beyond programs that the district funds. And we'll have plenty of time also for questions from you all. We also have hopefully some people on the Zoom and the Facebook Live from Thrive joining us. And if any of you have questions, I know for the Zoom, there is a Q&A that you can ask your questions, and you do have someone there who is moderating them. So they will be able to answer them if they can, otherwise we'll relay them all at the end. And I'm assuming the Facebook Live has something vaguely similar, and they can do the same thing. So let's get started. Now, first, before we get started here, if you have a smartphone, we're gonna be doing some polling tonight of the audience to kind of keep things moving along. There is a QR code up on the left side of your screen there. If you feel fancy and you know how to use those and take a shot of that, it will log you into the tool to do the polls, if you would like to do those. I'll leave it up there for a minute if folks want to do it. You still can get into it afterwards, it just doesn't have the nice QR code. And while you're doing that, for those of you who don't know me, my name is John Mertick. I'm helping lead up the Levy Committee. I'm not a school employee. I'm not compensated at all to do this. I have 4 wonderful kids in the district here. I was a graduate of this district. I've been pretty much a lifelong resident here, and I'm involved here because I'm seeing the value of the schools, not only from me growing up here, but also from seeing it through my kids' eyes and them experiencing it as well. And sometimes I think we even have more opportunities than we did as kids, which I think is really fascinating that we as a community has been able to invest in that. I remember doing theater back at the multi-purpose room at the CIS, which was not built for that at all. And now we're able to do amazing stage productions in here that it's a whole world difference. So it's those sort of investments that we as a district are doing for our kids that are making such an impact on their lives. So let's go ahead and try our first poll to see if things are working here. And again, this is kind of a fun one here just to break the ice a little bit. I hear there is a baseball game later this evening that might involve the Guardians. So we have a little poll of who your favorite Guardians player is. And I think the poll is working because people are voting very quickly, which is good. And we got a lot of Jose Ramirez fans. And if you don't like Jose, you just don't like baseball, apparently. Which works out just as good. So it looks like this is working for folks, which is really good. So let's, we're gonna have some more polls as we go through here. So make sure you keep that screen up on your phone, and then we'll do a couple more as we go through here. So let's go to the next slide here. And in the spring, we ran 2 levies. We ran API, new half-mil levy, and we did a renewal of 1%. Neither of them passed. And as the school board looked at this, they decided for the fall here, because of really the importance of the 1%, they wanted to focus on renewing the 1% in the fall here. So on November 8th, that will be the issue on the ballot, is the renewal of the 1% school district income tax. Let's move to the next slide here, and we're gonna hit a poll. And this is a little bit of a history lesson. How many years has it been since this was first instated? So how many years have we had this 1% income tax? And I see a lot of people are very educated out of the audience, which makes me really happy. You're exactly right if you answered C, which everyone did. 15 years. This is 15 years we've had this in the district. It's been renewed. This will be, after its first approval, this will be the 3rd renewal of it. So this will be the 4th time that it's coming up on the ballot for potential renewal. And when it gets renewed, it'll be renewed for another 5 years. So let's move ahead to the next slide. So what I want to talk about really here is, what does this tax mean? What does it mean to not only just our schools, but also our students, our staff, and just the community as a whole, because it's something that hits a lot of us. You know, a school impacts all of us in our community and impacts all of us in different ways. So I want to spend some time here tonight and explore that a little bit more. So if we go to the next slide, what does it mean for our school? It's 15% of the revenue of this school. So 15% of all of the revenue that is coming in, you know, this is from our local property taxes, state, and other federal fundings that come in. This is 15% of that. And if you want to put that in a dollar figure, that's nearly $2.5 million, right? And that's quite a bit of money. I mean, and especially in a 15% of budget, that's a quite a big chunk of change in there. And, you know, when I've talked with a lot of people about this, so like, okay, well, that's a lot of money in there, but like, you know, does that mean that there's waste? Does that mean like that means there's like this much extra space we have to spend? And the reality is that's not really the case. If you look, the Ohio put out their school report cards a couple of weeks ago, and if you haven't looked at them, I would encourage you to. On our website, onechippewa.org, which we'll point to at the end, there's a lot of great resources that start to dig into this. And one of the most interesting ones is this district here spends less than $10,000 per pupil on operating expenses. So $10,000 less than, and I think it's like $9,800 and some odd dollars, Ira will probably correct me, that is spent operating expenses per pupil. That's the lowest in all of Wayne County. There's not another school in the county that's under $10,000. It's way lower than the state average, which I believe is like right around $12,000. And if you look at the state as a whole, it's actually the lowest 20% of the state in terms of spending. And even in Wayne County, we're actually only one of, I believe, 3 or 4 schools that are even below the state average. So this speaks really highly to the financial efficiency that our school has. We're able to do a lot more with less. We're able to extend the spend that we have and the impact we have with a lower cost, to our residents, and we're able to use that money in a lot more efficient way than other school districts nearby. So if you go to the next slide, what it also means is it lets us keep upkeeping our schools. And we talked about this a little bit in the spring. We have buildings here. We have this wonderful new building here, which is going great. Everyone loves it. There's going to be a great video that Matt Rodriguez did for it. He's going to talk about it here. We're going to put it out next week. We have 2 other buildings in the district that do need some attention, and they do need some investments into them. And we also have a lot of our athletic facilities and other district facilities that similarly need investments. We have great turf at the football field. We have a track around it that's falling apart. I think the last time it was resurfaced, I was in high school, which is a long time ago for people that are wondering. We have tennis courts that have gigantic cracks in them. We have, a lot of our facilities are continuing to be a big investment. And with this 1%, it goes into that general fund for the district, but it helps the district have the flexibility to continue to make these investments back into our buildings, back into our properties, and make sure that they fit the image that our district really wants and that makes our community proud. So go to the next slide. What it also means is the education that we are able to provide our students continues to be exceptional. Over 65% of our district staff have a master's degree. That's not really all that common. If you go to a lot of districts around here, you don't see that a ton. In addition, they also have 17 years of teaching experience on average. That's a lot of tenure. That's a lot of teachers who have put time and energy into their careers and into their craft and continually turn out great work with a number of their students. I mean, that speaks a long time. I mean, think about it, even, jobs you might have. How many people are you working with that might have been there 17 years, right? I don't have a lot, that's for sure. And if we look at kind of that overall view of the school budget, 80% of it is focused on that as educational and staff. That's the predominant amount of where the school budget is going towards, is right back into academics, right back into our staff, right into educational needs, and all of the support pieces. Many of the extracurricular activities, those are a small percent of what the actual budget, if you look at it as a whole. And you can go to the treasurer's website, you can go and look at all the transactions in there. And I invite you to do it, because you'll go through page after page after page of transactions. which are literally school expenditures for staff, for their benefits, for educational programs, and it's going to be hard pressed to find many athletic ones or other extracurricular ones. So you can see this is where most of this money is going, and the beauty is this is paying off. We've been a blue ribbon school. We've been recognized in national awards. If you go to our district report card, you'll see that we have this interesting honor here of not only are we the bottom 20% in operating expenses per pupil, but we are in the top 20% of academic performance index. There's not a lot of schools that have that. Like I was trying to do some research on that, and that's a real sliver of schools that are able to pull that off. And this is what the district is supporting. This is what the community support of the 1% is able to give us. So if we go to the next slide, so back to a poll, and again, the district report cards just came out, and with them there was also a report on the senior high school academic performance index, and there's 823 high schools in Ohio. What was the rank of Chippewa? And we have somebody put one in here. I'm going to give some people some other opportunities if you want to guess it being something different. I have a really educated crowd tonight. I love this. You all know all of your facts and figures. This is great. Whoever answered, those who had answered 67, you're exactly right. For point of reference, number 1, anybody know who that was? Rocky River. Anyone know who number 90 was? That was Rittman. Anyone know who number 96 was? And Rittman was the next highest in the county after us, by the way. 96, anybody? That was Smithville. And then the tricky one, 152, and I'll give a hint, it's a district that borders us directly to our north. It was Wadsworth. Yeah. So that's sort of the ranking that we are in. And if you even look at some of the other districts around us, many of them are also falling well below us in those areas. So, you can see here the investment that our community is making into the schools, the excellent staff that is tenured, that is well-trained, that is engaging with our students, and the facilities that we're having, all of which are supported by the 1%, is making a difference and is putting Chippewa at the top of all the rest of these schools. They're the envy of some of these school districts out here. They would love to be in that 20 and 20 club. So let's move ahead to the next slide. So what else? So, one part of always education is that basic, having a great staff, having a great curriculum. But I remember when I was in school that what's really cool is the extracurricular opportunities that you get as a student and that help diversify you and help give you so many more experiences in life. From everything from, this room here, which is used for performing arts for both our high school as well as our middle school. Just before this, our middle schoolers, our 4th, 5th, and 6th graders were here trying out or doing their auditions for Frozen Junior, which they're able to use this facility for, right? We have all sorts of other activities from robotics, to ski club, to all sorts of different ways. We have makers classes, all sorts of interesting ways that our students can really expand what they're doing and expand their horizons, in addition to plenty of athletic opportunities that are offered by our school. And then on top of that, above and beyond educational opportunities, with over 30 elective classes, 8 AP classes, and 20 college credit plus craft classes, which that's kind of, if you think about it, if you've done college credit plus, you can do those through any of the universities around us. But those 20 are offered here at Chippewa, not a student having to drive to Oroville or drive to Canton or drive to Akron. They are offered here in this building with this staff directly. And if you think about that from an economic impact point of view, which I have a daughter who's a junior and is taking well advantage of that, she's taken a full ride of college classes as a junior, God love her. That's something that is going to save families, potentially over $35,000. And that's a unique opportunity for our students to be able to jumpstart their college careers. They can go ahead and graduate sooner. When I was in school, we didn't have it this great. We were able to, they had a different program. But for me, I was able to take a year off of college. Like I was able to graduate a year early. My daughter, she's probably going to be able to graduate 2 or 3 years early. And there's a lot of other students out there that are going to be able to do the same. And that's helping these students jumpstart faster into their career more than ever. And the same goes with all the partnerships with the Wayne County Schools Career Center and things like that. These students are able to jumpstart in their careers. They're able to learn trades, and they're really able to get out there in society even faster. So we go to the next slide. What it also means, not just a benefit to the funding for our school district, not just for our staff, not just for our students, not for all the pieces around it, but just the community in general. And having strong schools is an essential piece towards growing a community. And you think about it, a number of you I recognize are parents out there, and probably a good reason why you send your kids here is because of the strength of these schools, because of the high quality of education, because of being in the top 20% of academic performance index. That's a huge factor of why people are coming here. I've talked with our building principals and they say, I talked to parents and they said, we are looking at Chippewa because of the strong academic performance. We know our kids are going to be prepared well for school and for life. And it trickles into the community as well. And there's tons of studies on this. I mean, here's one I quoted here from Bigger Pockets that just talked about 4- and 5-star schools even being recession-proof, which we all know right now our economy is a little bit unstable. We've been really fortunate to have a lot of our home prices rising. With 4- and 5-star schools, those home prices are able to stabilize. We don't have to have those big dips that they hit. We're able to stabilize and weather those shifts by continuing to invest. And there's just more and more studies on this. There's a couple that we put up on our website. One talking about, I think, in Grove City, Ohio, where a school district levy failed for a renewal. And they saw an exodus of students and parents leaving the district, which then meant businesses leaving the district, which, if you read the article, the mayor got themselves in hot water and had to kind of present to city council about all of this. And there's just all sorts of you can see over and over again the impact of the school system and the impact of the quality of it. That's what drives people into the community. Continuing to invest in it is a critical part of that. We go to the next slide. The biggest thing I think for our residents that we want to convey is this 1%, it's no new tax. This is the same, we talked about at the beginning. This 1% has been here for 15 years. This is something that's been a part of our community for a long time. It's nothing new. Renewing it is not putting a new tax burden on you. It's keeping the same tax burden on before. And I know a number of you definitely, and I can feel the same thing, prices are going up, inflation's going up, it's pushing all of our pocketbooks. But the one thing I kind of challenge you to think about is if you look at communities around us here, if you look at the effective millage rate, which a way to kind of calculate that is to look at the millage you would have for your property taxes, and then it kind of there's a calculation the state does in there to have the impact of what an income tax is. It's not 1-to-1. Chippewa is at the lowest. Chippewa has the lowest effective millage rate of anybody in this county. So we're doing really good. This is a affordable place to live, and continuing to vote yes means you're not getting a new tax and you're still enjoying that low taxation that's already happening for you here in the district. So if we go to the next slide, we kind of have a little bit of a fun question answer here, or just a little bit of a thing. You've heard me ramble on a little bit. Hopefully some of this has been informative. Maybe you've learned something new. But what I want to ask here is, as you saw this, what is the benefits that you are seeing around this? If all those benefits and things that I've talked about, which ones are appealing to you? And the poll is a little bit different here. You kind of type an answer in. And then if you see one of somebody you like, you can kind of hit the little arrow to +1 it. So, and apparently the property values hit really hard, stable property values. That is an absolutely true thing. Quality education, maintain staff levels and classroom sizes, absolutely. And if you see ones you like on your screen, you can tap on the +1 as well. We got that. Academics, performing arts, sports. Tax doesn't affect retirees, definitely. That's actually a very interesting thing. We had a blog post on our website that kind of looked into the analysis of that. And if, because this tax doesn't affect retirees, the taxable impact on them is even lower. I think it's, darn near, probably I think like 30 or 40% less than the next nearest district near us. So that's kind of just tells you how much efficiency is there. But we're definitely getting some good answers. Stable property, the academics, stable, they maintain staff levels and classroom sizes, all big things in there, quality education. I think we got some good things here. These are really helpful. Thank you so much for all of this definite feedback here. So we're going to go on to the next slide here. We're moving very efficiently tonight here. So how can you learn more? Like you came to this meeting, so you're getting a little bit, you're understanding a little bit of what the issues are, but where are some more resources that you can understand more? Not just necessarily about this levy, but just the school district in general, because many of you know we did a survey of the community earlier this year, and that was one of the biggest pieces of feedback we've heard is our town wants to know more about our schools. They want to hear more communication from them. They want to understand the issues. They want to understand what's going on. And so we put a number of resources together as the Levy Committee to try to help people out. So the first one is, we've done a series of videos which are called Pod Talks. We're big fans of alliteration here, I suppose. But these are videos that we've been starting to do with a number of our administrators. We've done two with Todd Osborne, we've done one with Ira. We have one coming out tomorrow with Jamie Solinger. We have another one with Angela, who's our new basic party principal, and we have a couple other ones, Matt Rodriguez, and others coming too. But the idea of these videos is to really kind of help to get you know some of the administrators that are part of our district, what they're seeing is the values of it, and just sort of helping you understand some of the things that you might be wondering. Where does this 1% tax go to? What is the strategic plan for the district? How does school funding work in our district? And what is some of the history of that? What are the programs and things that we're instituting in some of our schools? They're great videos. They're well produced by my dear friend Caroline Cooper, who does an amazing job putting these together. Don't sell yourself short, they are really good. And so they're up there, they're on a YouTube playlist. If you go to toddtalks.onechippewa.org, you can see the whole list of them. We hope to even continue these sort of past the levy campaign, because we think this is a really important service that we can provide the community, just to kind of help to get you know who your school is, who the leaders are in your school, who they are, because they're approachable, they're great human beings, every single one of them. I've got to sit down and talk with every one of them, and they're great people. So that's one big resource. The second resource is our second public meeting, and we're going to be doing it back in this school on November 2nd. Now we're going to be doing it this time up in the cafeteria, and we're going to be starting it a little bit earlier because we're going to host a spaghetti dinner for the community to come and enjoy. So we're going to start it a little bit earlier at 5:30. We have a number of our staff and students are going to be here serving dinner to everybody. And then at 6:30, we're going to start into a program where we're going to get to learn a little bit more about some of the students, the alumni, and folks that have been a part of our district and some of the impacts that they've had. So definitely put this one on your calendar. The nice thing is it's a midweek. Nobody feels like cooking in the middle of the week. So it's a great excuse that way. Bring your whole family. We have childcare and all of that. And just come enjoy it. And so that is going to be November 2nd. And the final thing here, well, one of the final things is register to vote. And the good news is if you haven't registered to vote, you've got 2 hours. So jump on that if you have not. And you can go to this website, you can do it all online. It goes really, really quickly. So if you have not registered to vote, now is the time to go do that very quickly. And finally, we have a whole bunch of other resources available. We have our website, which I've talked to, onechippewa.org. We post a lot of longer form content and some analysis. We've done some analysis on some of the financial information, comparing school report card data. Digging into, we just did an article on some of the safety investments the school has put in, and preview a lot of the videos and other activities that are going on. So definitely check this out as a good resource. It's a good way that if you're really looking to answer some questions, head there. If you have ideas for content, the things you want to know about, let us know. We can throw an article together. I love to write. We also are on both Facebook and Instagram. We post a lot of our content from our website onto both channels, but then we also share a lot of content from cool stuff that's happening in the schools as well through those channels. So definitely go check those out. And we also have our YouTube channel, which is where we have all our Todd Talk videos. We have a whole series of videos from alumni and other folks in the district just talking about their experiences being at Chippewa. This public meeting, we will put the recording up there for that as well, and other cool assets. So definitely go check all of those out. And with that, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. We have plenty of time here because I blasted through all of this for lots of questions from folks. So I don't know if we have any questions from folks in the room or if we have any from Zoom. We have none from Zoom. Do we have anybody from Facebook Live? I must have like hit everything today. I don't do that very often. Any questions from folks in the room about the levy, about things that are happening in schools, anything of that nature?
I heard a comment from my husband when I was reading the article on the school board meeting, and they were talking about the levy. One of them was robotics. He says, "What do we need robotics, in the high school?" I told it's future. We got to get it, but I didn't know if we had anything to add.
So the question was, I'll just relay it for the people on the line. There was a question around the robotics and seeing and understanding like what is the value of it, like why is it valuable to have in the schools? And you know, I've known a couple of kids that are involved in the robotics program, and I can definitely say from a technology standpoint, it's kind of very cool. Like it's where a lot of things are going. But I think also what we see in a lot of extracurricular activities are there things that draw kids into the school. It gives them something to be excited about and passionate about. And even these robotics clubs, I mean, they're going to competitions. They're going and showing off what they're doing. You know, we see that so much of kids just being very proud of the things that they've put together and that they've built. You know, the same way they might be proud of artwork projects they've done, the same work they might be proud of performing art they're doing up here, their work in the band, their work on the athletic field. All of those things are ways that sort of help keep our students excited, engaged, happy, and really help set them up for sort of a well-rounded future. So maybe they won't be going and making robots, but maybe they will. Maybe that would be a career passion that unlocks for them, but it becomes a really interesting thing that can draw a kid in that maybe not have found another thing in school that was interesting, but found this and it found them as a passion for them. But it's a very good question. Any other good questions? Yes.
I'm not sure if it's the right forum, if you can set the record straight, but the information, unfortunately, it's on the internet right now. It's looking really as to where does the district stand in regards to the pipeline money? Where does the district stand in regards to the COVID relief money that it was received in the last few years?
So I'm going to try to answer at least the pipeline really well, and I might need to defer the one on the COVID because I don't have as much knowledge on that. The pipeline money, as you know, the Nexus has appealed this in court several times. Recently, and I think within a couple of months ago, they reached a settlement with the state of Ohio. That wasn't the full amount that was originally planned, but it was a fairly good percentage of it. I think it was somewhere in the 60-70%, I can't remember the exact number, 60% range. There has since been a school district that has came and challenged that. So now it kind of sets things back a little bit. The school district has received some funds from it. It hasn't received the full amount it's expecting to, but it did receive some partial payment. So right now the district is still kind of a little bit of a limbo of where that will fully end up. I mean, there's the hope that this kind of clears itself up. It sticks right about that 60% number and life goes on. It might bump up a little bit, probably won't bump down, but that's where that stands. In terms of the COVID relief dollars, I don't have as much expertise on any of that stuff. And I don't know if we have any information on our district website and things about that, Ira.
I don't believe, but most of the ESSER money is being used to reinforce trained staff. So disinfectant. So we've spent a ton of money just trying to shore up the lost educational opportunities of the last couple of years. It is a proven fact that education through staying at home watching a computer is not as effective as it is in face-to-face for most children. There are some that thrive, but the majority need that face-to-face interaction, not only intellectually, but also socially. So that being said, is it fair to say that the amount of expenses that this incurred issues has been compensated by the refund, or are we in negative? Short-term answer, yes, we've been compensated. Long-term answer, jury's still out. I mean, how do you take a look at a 5 or 6 year old who has been, and I'm going to use the word emotionally scarred, and I don't mean it to be dramatic, but our 5 and 6 and 7 year olds have come to school with a mask on, and they've not seen one another. And what does that do to our social development? So there's some long-term effects out there. We're living in a world today that's much more fearful. What disease is coming down the road? How does that impact us emotionally? First, pipeline money. That money can earmarked for a specific area. I'm sorry, the pipeline money that is possibly coming based on potential litigation settlements. So is that earmarked for a specific area, or is it restricted to only capital or use salaries? So pipeline money is, and it's kind of sad that this district has pigeonholed one of the public utility funds that the district receives. Chippewa Local Schools receives public utility money from a variety of public utilities, pipeline being one. I get it, it's a big number, not trying to minimum. But we have earmarked a piece of that. Effective first of this year, I know there was talk in the past, it was, it wasn't. And there was a resolution made at the end of last year to money that we're getting incrementally from that pipeline to be used for capital improvement. What is the approximate, even at 60% or 70%? What's the approximate amount that the district expects? That's looking at about 300,000.
And hopefully, I think Caroline, did that capture well over the audio?
But I'm taking notes. And we'll
Okay.
release
Yep.
notes about the questions.
Yeah, so we'll release a lot of notes on the feedback of this, just so everyone has, we'll put it up on our website. These are really excellent questions. Did that help answer your question, by the way? Awesome. What other questions do we have for the audience here?
One thing I wanted to say was, I know we failed the last levy, and you said we did a survey.
Hmm?
We listened to the public, do we know why? Do we find real answers why the voters of this community voted against that? Other than saying we put a survey out and we want to be transparent, and we're having this meeting, and we have these websites, and we have great schools, but do we listen? Do we find out? And what are we doing differently, okay, to influence that vote other than having?
It's a very, very fair question. So I think one thing on the survey that we were kind of cognizant of is the data set was not gigantic. I think we had a couple hundred people respond, which in a town with about a population of around 8 or 9,000, or a community of about 8 or 9,000, from a statistical size, it's kind of small. So we wanted to be a little bit conscientious of what all that meant and who we were getting after. I think the biggest takeaway that we saw was there was a lot of trust that the community had in the staff and teachers in the building. They loved the staff. That was the one thing we heard very loud and clear. For parents that were involved in the school, they definitely had a good, strong communication. The school uses final forms for a lot of communication. Parents loved that. They really, responded to that at a high level. Where we started to see some of the challenges were as the rest of the community was trying to understand what was going on with the district, why decisions were made, how is money spent, understanding just even if the school has a strategic plan. I mean, we had, I think only 40% of respondents knew the district had a strategic plan that's been on the website for a couple of years now. And I think those are the things that took everybody aback here of, there seems to be a lack of really trying to get the message out there. I mean, a lot of the information is definitely available if you dig through our website or the district website. If you stay on top of the news, you can piece together and you can stay with it. But the society we live in, that's hard for any of us to spend a lot of time on. So where we saw as a need is how can we be more aggressive in pushing out this information? One part of it, obviously, for the sake of the schools, we want to get this levy passed. There's no doubt about it. But I think even as a levy committee, we were coming together. We said, this is something that we know is going to be a bigger systematic thing that we want to help influence over time to get to the point where our schools or our community can understand our schools. So that when we have a meeting like this, not that I don't love you all here, but we have 5 times as many people because they're really excited. Then we have a school board meeting that there's, not a handful of people, there's 100 people showing up, and just people really helping being plugged in, because I think the one sense that we had from the feedback and the comments that there was just a disconnect happening, and we saw as part of the need was to make that reconnection. And it wasn't necessarily completely related to schools. I think people saw the same thing in other elements of the town, and we shared the survey results. They were raw up on our website. You can look at them and share them with a number of other community groups that also looked into them, and we're able to glean some pretty interesting insights. So that's kind of what we have done to this point. I think that's the first biggest takeaway is our community knows we have amazing educators, and our parents in our schools really appreciate the work that they do, but how can we be just transparent about where this district is going? And I think that's why, from a levy campaign point of view, even longer term, that's the investments we want to put with our time and energy is in that. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, just trying to be positive. I'm a big supporter of our schools. So as a spokesperson in the community, to try to relay these messages, I think you're spot on with the disconnect. The gentleman's question for us was a lot of people are money being set aside for certain things. They want to know. And we listed a bunch of things that need improvement. Well, what's first on the list? When is it going to happen? Those type of answers right here. So I've been an educator for 26 years. I know our public wants to know these things because they've heard things before that has never happened.
Yeah.
And until we start setting those answers, you're going to have people that are going to be not supportive.
Yeah. And I think that's a very fair position. I think for me personally, I got involved in this because, I have kids in here and I believe in this district more than anything. And as I've really got a chance to know our administrators, our board, our administration, I think the more and more that we kind of dig into some of those things, we sort of realize a lot of that has very plausible explanations, but it comes down to kind of like a communication half of things and how can we improve that outreach and just helping people sort of understand all of the pieces to it. And it can be a little bit of a challenge. I don't point fingers at anybody on this because it's the reality of what's happened. And so I think we've taken the task on for us is let's showcase and bring these leaders out in front and show, hey, they're just like you. Many of them are members of our community, so they're not just an employee here, but they're a resident. They have their kids in this district, and that they have just as vested interest in this as just everyone else does. So It's a long haul here, but we're really hopeful, and we've got a lot of really positive community support from all of this. So thank you. We have a question on the Zoom.
I wanted to add something really quick.
Go for it.
In terms of what's different for this levy than the last round, we also looked at the voter data of likely voters, and we've been targeting different groups with different messages. So we understand that not everybody has the same concerns. Like you said, we know that the parents in this district are very engaged. We also know from voter data that they aren't the likely voters. So even though we know we have their support, they may not show up at the polls. We know who does show up at the polls, and we're trying to target the messaging with what they need to hear and understand about the value of supporting this levy. And any of you who would like to volunteer, if you're highly engaged, we have those opportunities online too.
Yes.
Are you gonna drive to the polls? Is that what you're saying?
I can absolutely do that. But I'm gonna go vote early, so I don't have to.
I got 7 spots in my car. We had one question online.
We have two, but the first one is from the superintendent regarding ESSER one. I was gonna reiterate what he was saying, what the superintendent says in the chat. Major purchases of ESSER money included Chromebooks, counseling services for Hazel Harvey and CIS, virtual learning platform and programs, as well as cleaning materials. So
Yeah. So just to reemphasize, the investments from the COVID included Chromebooks, which I know from the school we've invested enough in there so that every student has a Chromebook available to them, which is again a very unique thing you don't see in a lot of schools that have that. But also online training, online learning platforms, counseling services, and I think Ira mentioned a lot of disinfectants and other sort of things that you kind of needed in a more post-COVID world to make sure we have a clean and hygienic school.
okay, so
Next.
here's the first question. Has an income tax limit been considered for the 1%, i.e. 1% tax on the first $75,000 in qualified income? If not, and this failed, would that be considered?
So that's a great question. So one thing to understand about how the school district income tax works, it's a program that is not administered by the school district. It is administered by the state of Ohio. And the state of Ohio really gives some very narrow guidelines of how to administer it. There's really only kind of 2 choices. One is just an all income and the other is an earned income, and then choosing whatever the percentage is. But it doesn't give an ability to say, caps or, cliffs or things like that to put into it. So really it's not up to the district of saying, we're going to want the cap it at this amount. It's the state of Ohio of, if you're going to do this, these are the only ways you can't do this.
And the second question was, why wasn't the property tax levy added to the ballot? Does the district plan on putting the property tax levy back on the table?
So the main rationale that I've understood from the Board of Education is there was an urge to sort of focus on 1% for this fall because it's a crucial part of the operating expenses for our district. And, if it would fail, that would be a big problem. So trying to keep a lot of the focus on getting that one passed. What the future holds, once again, how I said I'm not a district employee or an administrator or a board member. I kind of stand by all that. I know, there might be some considerations of what that would look like in the future, but that's not anything I can per se speculate on. And another question.
I wanted to point out the fact that the 1% goes up and down with the community's income.
Yes.
So when things are bad, the school's getting less.
True. And the other thing to also think about from a property tax standpoint, which a lot of people don't realize, is at the point in which a millage is approved, effectively the amount of money to be collected of that is sort of frozen in time. I mean, there are some factors where if new properties come in, that can go up a little bit, but effectively it's frozen in time. So it's a great way to think about it. Like, we're all right now being hit by inflation really hard. There's no doubt about it. The challenge for the school district is it's not able to bring in the revenue to account for that until years down the road, if not longer. So it's kind of way behind, where some of us, in our jobs, we might be able to negotiate a pay raise or something like that to help increase our revenue quite a bit. The school district has to wait years for that. At least for the income tax portion, it's gonna have to wait at least a tax year or two for that to kick in. And for the property tax thing, some of these are frozen, but going back, 20 or 30 years. So those aren't increasing with the pace of inflation. So it's kind of a good point to sort of think about. Any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
I'll talk over here because he's gonna answer.
Okay.
15 years ago, got together and decided that 1% was going to come on the ballot. We also, at that time, put forth that we were not going to renew on the real estate tax portions, which allowed it to drop down to the minimum that the county controls. Since that time, now we're adding back on. We're trying to add back on another real estate. We'll take it above the minimum county control, correct?
We're not adding a real estate portion with this.
So if we go back, this will be back on the ballot. They're going for one right now because they're focusing on what they need to stay alive and not cut. But there is intent, unlike back 50 years ago, where the social community has 1%. Buy into this, it helps the people that are retired because they won't see an increase in their real estate taxes. It won't affect people that are working. Majority of people working have some affiliation with schools, children, grandchildren in there, and want to see the schools thrive. So that's how it passed. Now we've got potential of the whole community knows, since we went out last time or two, that we're going to come back with the other real estate tax eventually to get what eventually the goal is, to improve the school buildings because people Harvey, et cetera, means that this 1% is not going to cover all that expenditure. Nor will the gas pipe, nor will we need slush fund from the COVID money. But talk about transparency. Isn't transparency to say what our plans are for the next? A business runs a 5-year plan. Doesn't the school board have a 5-year plan of where money is needed and where it's going to come from? And would that real estate tax eventually have to be on the ballot? And why would we be transparent? Say, we're not going to put it on right now, but our goal is to have that.
So you want to take that or you want me to? I'll take kind of like the first wash at it. And again, I have to answer this from perspective, as before, I am not a school board, I'm not a board employee, I'm not a district employee, I'm not a board member, I'm not privy to any of those internal discussions. I'm just a parent and I'm the person who's been in the district, the majority of my 42 years on this planet. So a couple things. One, there is a 5-year plan that's listed on the district website that goes into all of the big things that the district is looking to achieve. And one of those is obviously around buildings and things like that. So the intent of what they're trying to do is fairly well laid out there. I think the one thing that we all know with plans is there's always a lot of flexibility, and things change over time depending upon what various situations might happen. And so there's some flex in there, but I would say the strategic plan is fairly aligned with where the district goes. In terms of it looking at from a taxation point of view, from what I've seen from the school district at this point, they're still trying to kind of weigh a lot of the options of what makes the most sense. I think when a few years ago, when I believe there was a PI levy that was pulled off of the ballot when some of the COVID money was coming in, there was an intention that, hey, that should be able to supplement, what we're doing here as well. It looks like it's around equivalent, it should supplement it, without the knowing in the future that a lot of the pipeline money was going to be complicated and was going to be drawn through litigation and all sorts of other things and wouldn't, live up to all of its stuff. So I think could at some point in the future there be a real estate tax levy? Absolutely, because the future goes really, 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 really long. We don't know what it looks like. Could there very well be a need for additional funding to build buildings like this? Yeah, that could be the case. But I think the one thing that the district kind of wants to be conscious of is also not, knowingly saying something that they're not as certain is going to be entirely the case. And I think they're just trying to figure it out for the best of the community here, because they realize, they don't want to go to the community for money if they can find another way to get around it. One of the things that I've seen our district been really good at over the last couple of years is going after grant funding, especially for a lot of the safety investments we put in our schools, for a number of the technology investments, things that would have had to come out of the general fund or PI funding before, more aggressive in going after grants. So I think there's also a sense of creativity that the district is trying to go after to avoid going to the taxpayers. Well, at some point it may happen. I mean, I'm not on the board, I don't need to make that decision, but could very well, I don't know. But I think the board's taking, at least from my vantage point, the perspective of when we're ready to do that, let's make sure that we're going to the community knowing that this has to be sort of be the case and going to them for more of the amount than is versus saying, oh, we might need this in the future. So let's just ask for a lot and hope for the best. Not that maybe is not a perfect answer to your question, but I also know that there's a lot of complexities in school funding that I am just even beginning to wrap my head around. So I don't know if that helps answer it, Ira, if you want to add any more to that.
I always think about what is a budget, and they change based on circumstances. But at the end of the day, the school board did make a commitment 50 years ago at that time.
Yep.
In regards to what their immediate plans were.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't heard anything of that recently.
I'll also add that it was an entirely different school board 15 years ago with administration. Not that I'm pointing fingers here by any means, but I mean, the realities life change. I mean, name a plan you had 15 years ago and tell me where it's at today. I'm sure there's a couple of those that went a little bit off. I mean, it happens to all of us. I can understand with what communication happened. I think that's something that we're trying to work with the school district to help get that out there. But where the funding needs to be in the future, I think, that'll just have to be determined once we kind of get closer to knowing where these buildings need to go. I'll let Ira answer here a little more.
I have to be careful, number one. I am an employee by the school district, so I am not for or against the tax levy. What I can give you is facts. When I was working in high school, my desire was one day I will reach the Social Security limit. It was about $15,500. Because when you got over the Social Security limit, you didn't have to contribute to Social Security anymore. I was almost there. That's what they did to the Social Security limit. Up and up and up. And it's like chasing the carrot. If you look at our 5-year forecast, it's made up of 3 big numbers: real estate and personal property tax, school district income tax, and state funding. As a district, I would ask you, which one of those do you think that we can influence? Now, let's go down to the other side of that. We've got revenue coming in, and we have expenses, cash going out. We have our biggest cash outflows are salary and benefits. And let's just focus a minute on benefits for most of you people who work in the private industry. Approximately how much does your health insurance go up a year? $5, 6, 10, 12, 14. You take a look at the revenue side, so I went back up to the top. I can't increase my revenue side like 10, 12, 14% a year. My expenses are caught up in the inflation period. And if inflation goes up, all my expenses go up. We all want to raise. We try to be very mindful, very thoughtful of how we pay our staff. We look at what the other districts are paying around us, because truth be told, we are in competition for those people out there that want to teach in schools. What level of employee do you want working in your school to educate your children? These are hard things that we have to deal with, and it makes it difficult. Do we like coming back to the community to ask for an increase in funds? By design from the state, it doesn't give us an option. Wadsworth just did it. Yes, they're building a new building. But for those of you who own your home, does the cost of maintaining your home go up as the home gets older? And I guess the answer is yes, unless you properly maintain it through the years. And that's the dilemma we're in here, is we need to start maintaining the buildings that we have. So I don't know that I directly answer your question. I can't tell you that a school board in the future will want another property tax levy out there. The one that we had in the spring was a very specific, it's not considered general fund. It was considered permanent improvement fund. And those monies go for the improvement of the buildings, allowing us to use our other resources to educate the children of our district. But we either have to pull money out of our general fund, which is those funds that we really want to use to educate the children of our district, or we need a PI to be out there on the other side. And I'm not advocating building a new school. We're not building a new school or adding other. I'm just, these are the realities that we have to deal with on a daily basis. And sometimes it looks ugly, because we got to make sure we have enough money to stay liquid and still educate our children. Does that help you?
It was a good explanation. It's not a direct answer, which I appreciate.
Thank you so much, I appreciate that. We still have time for another couple questions if anybody else has any, or if we've had any from any of the online channels. One more, go ahead.
Is there any specific reason that we don't try to build a new Hazel Harvey or why do we keep putting money into a building or trying to put money into a building? Passage years by. Why don't we try to build a levy?
You know, I will say that that has been a topic of conversation the board has sort of wrestled with over is not only just the last year or so, but even much longer before that. What I can say from my observations as the current board is they're kind of looking at a lot of where a little bit of the economic climate is and trying to stay ahead of that a little bit. You know, recognizing that a lot of costs and these things are just skyrocketing quite a bit. And it's kind of a challenging time to build. It has been a challenging time to build for the last year or so, which is probably would have been lined off the window, combined with the fact of, you know, the Nexus pipeline money, you know, has been delayed and there's a lot of question marks there. Those are getting closer to resolution. I mean, I think in the end of the day, there is an intention to replace that building in one form or another. The reality is, where we sit today is, we got kids that go there every day of the week and they need to be safe and secure. And, you know, we have to, as a district, continue to maintain that until, you know, the point in which you can retire. You're exactly right, it's at the very end. But until we're able as a district to be in a position to do that, to make that investment in expanding a building, building a new property, something else, we can't just ignore the building, unfortunately.
I know there's other districts out there, and I'm not sure if we qualify or not, that did get federal money or I'm in construction, for example, Ravenna got $8 million for the school district from the federal government to upgrade their ventilation system. Did we get anything for that? Did anybody try to get anything for that? Because I can tell you right now, Hazel Harvey has no ventilation.
I don't know exactly in terms of the COVID sorts of monies there, what that situation necessarily looked like. I don't know, Byron, if you want to comment. Maybe you should just stay up front here, Ira. It seems like you have all the good, better answers to the questions than I do.
COVID money is great if you can spend it based on the requirements that they have given you around that. So they have, at the start, gave us SO1, then they gave us SO2, and now we're on, I call it SO3 or ARPA. It's all COVID related money. But there are strings attached to that as to what you can spend it on. And I'm going to guess that the district that you just talked about with an $8 million is not using $8 million in ventilation.
Tell you you're wrong.
Really?
Yeah, we just did one, it's $4 million in one school.
Okay.
Now we're doing 4 other schools for them, and they're $4 more million.
They must have gotten
And
this.
ventilation, I don't know what they did, I don't know how they did it, but it's federal money. It's prevailing wage money, the pay is prevailing wage, so it's federal money to work on it. If the employees make X amount of dollars, like the federal job would, and they're $8 million they got in one district. And I know that Hazel Harvey could use heating and cooling. Been in the building, I've been through the building.
Oh,
It definitely could use ventilation. If you're gonna keep the building, we need to do our due diligence and looking into things like this and says we can use that on ventilation. I don't know the requirements. I'm assuming that the school board has looked into this stuff, but I don't know.
we have in that sense, but I can tell you, the estimate money that we got is nowhere near $8 million. Nowhere.
Maybe we didn't qualify for it for whatever reason, and Ravenna schools did. I don't know what you had to do to get through it.
It was really based on your low income ratio. So I came from a district, Fremont City Schools, that had a 72% low income population. And even with that, we were nowhere near $8 million. So I don't have an answer for that. But with all of our SO money, we have to follow some guidelines very specifically as what we can spend it on. If you call the treasurer at Akron City Schools, or even Cleveland Metros, they're having trouble figuring out how to spend the money that they got, and they've got huge dollars out there. But I believe we are maximizing what we have, and we will. So we've spent all of our SO1, which had to be spent by this past September. We're now in SO2, which has to be spent by the end of next September, and then the ARPA the following year. And right now we're on track to do that, but it's with some looking at ventilation for CIS. It's for shoring up the education of our children. We just ran a summer program this year to help kids get back up to speed from where they were at prior to COVID. But there's restrictions out there, and we don't talk about that. You don't hear about that. It's just the government gave us money, but there are restrictions.
Thank you, Ira. And these are very good questions. I really appreciate this feedback. And like that, all these questions and answers, even if we're not in full, we'll be able to put them on our website afterwards, so everyone else can also benefit from that as well. One more question?
No, I just wanted to comment on his question of why Hazel Harvey wasn't, replaced. And in 2005, we tried. The state brought us money and said, we'll pay a certain percentage of it if the community in, the community threw the levy down. And we kept trying and trying and trying. And it's taken till, when did we pass the levy for this building?
2017, was it?
Yeah.
16,
15.
15.
So
And we had to
it
take.
is without lack of trying.
Yeah, and Hazel Harvey had to be taken off of that, by the way, so it wasn't, at that time, if you remember, it was an entire transformation of Hazel Harvey Middle School being knocked out, whole new buildings built here, and then a major renovation to the current CIS building, which was the high school. And that was completely scrapped. I think there was a couple intermediate plans in there as well that did not get passed to the voters. And finally, and I think by an extremely narrow margin, if I recall, the funding for this building was approved. So, I mean, the comments there is, yeah, I think it is fair to say that it's not been for lack of trying, not been for lack of taking advantage of dollars. There's been, you know, some alignment with the community that's not worked out for various reasons. Any more last questions? Anything more from the online? All right, well, thank you all. These have been very good questions. I really, really, really appreciate it, including the tough ones, because these are the ones we want to hear. We'll have all the information from the questions up online, and we invite you to join us back here on November 2nd. Come early for dinner. Thank you, everyone.